last moment, but we're clear now, and thank you for joining us today all across the nation. And wherever you may be, I trust that you're enjoying the beginning of another year. And as we come into this winter season, depending on where you are, then your weather will probably be drastically different than someone else's experiencing. Here in Texas, we've had warm and then cold and then warm and then cold, which is typical for Texas. Some of you may be snowed in up north, and others of you may be enjoying some beautiful weather in the sunny state of Florida or California. But welcome and Happy New Year. We're delighted to share with you again today. The subject today is going to be around taxes again. We did a webinar in December and tried to bring people up to date on things that were happening. And as government can be very unpredictable, we had heard about the Secure Act of 2019. It became that name, as you see on your screen. The Secure simply stands for Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement. Now, we're not going to talk about that subject. That's the name that the Congress gave to it, and now has become known as the Secure Act of 2019. What caught everyone by surprise was the fact that the normal functioning of Congress, we were expecting this act to actually pass in the first quarter of 2020 and then possibly go into effect the first day of 2021. However, this act was passed in December the 19th, I believe it is, of 2019, and immediately became effective on January 1 of 2020. Therefore, our urgency of getting information to you, because it will affect several things that you need to know about your IRA, but also about taxes. So sitting with me here today is our partner in Granite Financial Group, and that is Casey Buckner, who is a CFP and a CRPC. And also with me today is a gentleman that you may have met last time if you were on the call with us, and that person is Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson is the founder of Cambridge Tax Advisors and will be involved with us again today. You'll see a disclaimer on our screen. I don't want to go too quickly. We do not give tax advice or accounting advice, and the material that's been prepared for this presentation is for informational purposes only. However, in and around our firm, we have tax and legal and accounting professional people as well as investment people. So today we're going to be discussing the things that would impact you. And let me just explain to you why Granite Financial does these type of meetings. In the recent January edition of Financial Advisor, there was a survey made by a particular company, and they were surveying couples, families that wanted certain types of advice from their financial advisor. And so they broke it down into planning firms, investment advisors, wealth management firms, and then a more full, what's called family offices. And 74.8% of people responded, I like the planning firm only, that's good. I like the investment advisors, that's okay. Wealth management firms, that's okay. But what we really want is a financial planning firm that has full services, tax advisory, legal counsel and legal advisory, as well as investment. And so Granite Financial Group has organically grown to a point that all of those things are included in the services that are provided here in our offices by our strategic partners, as well as the advisors in the investment world. And so what's nice is if someone is listening as a friend that's sitting with you in your lunch and learn today, and you do not have full advice and you don't know where to go to get it, because now you've got to be introduced to a totally different person, you might want to consider a firm that will give you the full the full range of the tax advisory, the legal advisory, as well as the investment advisory. Now today we're going to be discussing the rules of RMDs and the new contribution rules and the death of the stretch IRA. That's going to be a big one. New planning strategies for you and your inheritors, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. I do want to remind you that the importance of this is what's happening in our congressional discussions and projections for 2020. No one really knows who is going to be elected in the 2020 election. That's not only a presidential, but that's U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, and they are the ones that actually make the rules and the regulations for taxation. As most of you know, last month when we did this webinar, we showed you a tax history chart, and the taxes started in 1913 at the highest rate was 7%. Within 2 years it was 17%, and 2 years later it was 67%. And stayed in that range for quite a while, up and down a little bit. The reason that it spiked was the World War I expenses. And so it's always related to the need of the government to get more money to be able to cover what they feel like is important, and certainly the World War caused a great spike in expenses. Today, we are at a point that our country is very much in debt. They report 24 trillion, but that number is much greater when you include Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Therefore, as the political winds are blowing, no one really knows who's going to be elected and how that's going. But I read again from the Financial Advisor magazine from January of 2020, and I'm just going to quote. It says, while President Trump's proposal to reduce the 22% marginal rate to 15 is an attempt to cut taxes for the middle class, the tax proposals of the other political party and the candidates set out each tax increases. Some are more dramatic than others. I read one here that says most of them are proposing a wealth tax, a raise in the highest tax bracket up to 39.6, and a hike in capital gains and corporate tax rates. And in fact, one of the candidates for the wins the presidency is talking about raising the taxes up to 70%. I quote that. It says, with some who want a 70% top individual rate. I don't think that rate would pass quickly and easily. However, they are going to be looking for more money for the government. And right now we have low tax rates. We call it taxes on sale. So for the year of 2020, 2021, and through 2025, there is an opportunity for our listening audience to do some very creative strategies that will help possibly lower your income tax rates and income tax brackets, and possibly not even be paying income tax on some of your earnings because of the things that we can do in these next 6 years, including this year of 2020. Therefore, the subjects we're covering today, these new rules on the RMDs, the new contribution, basically the death of the stretch IRA, and then new planning strategies. Stay tuned. Don't let any little detail that's going to be shared with you kind of tune you out for even a moment or so. Just kind of hang in there with us, because we want to give you the details, but we also want you to know that we're very concerned about tax rates going up in the near future, and especially when a couple that's filing jointly in their tax return, one of them become deceased, and then the survivor must be now a single filer and be at a higher tax rate with lower thresholds. Those things are impacting, and they will impact you, probably almost everyone that's listening at one time or another. So we're going to move right along in these subjects today, and we're going to begin by talking about the new rules for RMDs. And sitting to my side is Casey Buckner, which I already have introduced him, and he's going to take it from here and begin to share with you some details. Also, Mark Robinson will enter in at an appropriate time. So hang in, let's go, and Casey Buckner, take us away.
All right, thank you, Ray. Well, we have some new rules for required minimum distributions that passed with this act here. Many of you are familiar with the old rule that used to be 70 and a half as the age at which you must begin taking required minimum distributions. Well, that age is now moved to 72. A quick reminder of what RMDs are: since you've never paid tax on your traditional IRAs, your 401ks, etc., those accounts have grown over the years, tax deferred. So the government wants to start getting some of that tax back, and they force IRA owners to start taking a minimum out by a certain age. That age has been 70 and a half. If you're not already taking out before then, they will require you to start it. Well, that age has now moved to 72. Again, this is only for traditional IRAs, not Roth IRAs. Roth IRAs have no required minimum distributions during your lifetime if you are the owner of that Roth IRA. So this means that if you were not 70 and a half before December 31st of 2019, you can now wait until the year in which you turn 72 to begin those minimum withdrawals if you're not yet pulling monies from your IRAs. And so that's a good thing, but there is one quirk that we've noticed in these new rules, is that for those who are today currently 70 and a half or 71, and you've already taken your first RMD in 2018 or 2019, well, sadly, you are stuck in the old system and you must continue your RMDs as is. This is very clear in the new rules, and we call it the RMD gray zone. Though it might seem like you could skip this year and wait until you're 72, for instance, if you took an RMD last year, 2019 being 70 and a half that year, and you are 71 in all of 2020, it looks like you could skip a year. Well, unfortunately, that is not allowed. The old system would still apply for you. However, if you are turning 72 in this next year, you will be able to delay the RMDs until that age, and that could help in a lot of different areas. For instance, some strategies that you could deploy there, well, this could actually give another 1 or 2 years for you to make Roth IRA conversions. Converting your IRA dollars to Roth IRAs could be a good move for future taxation, as Roth IRA growth is income tax-free when you pull it out in the future. Now, many people are choosing to convert some of their taxable dollars now before they hit that RMD age and have to pull money out of their regular IRA and pay taxes on it. As Ray mentioned, future tax rates could be higher. Well, this RMD age change could give another year or two for you to make Roth IRA conversions. And if you're not talking with anybody about Roth conversions and how they might fit into your overall plans, you do need to contact us or contact your planner right away so we can do some analysis with you and talk about if conversions to Roth IRAs fit your long-term planning needs there. And so another quirk that we've noticed with the new rules for RMDs, and this talks a little bit about qualified charitable distributions, which our last webinar covered in detail. Qualified charitable distributions redirect your ordinary charitable giving to simply come from your IRA instead of your bank account or your pocket. The reason people might do that is they receive a tax benefit in that a QCD counts toward your RMDs, but there's no taxation to you for making that qualified charitable distribution. Now, QCDs, though, are still allowed after age 70 and a half. They did not move up to 72. So if you're 70 and a half today, you can do a QCD. And one quirk there too, it's not the year in which you turn 70 and a half. You actually physically have to be 70 and a half before you can use a QCD. But since there's no RMD at age 70 and a half or 71, the QCD may not have its full tax benefits until you reach age 72, but they generally can still be a good idea for anyone over age 70 and a half, and you have IRA dollars and you give to charities fairly regularly. You really do need to consider utilizing the QCD to fund your charitable giving. There are still good tax advantages there to be had. So talk with your planner and tax advisor about that. So another big change in the Secure Act is the IRA contribution rules. We have a change there that could be very helpful in some instances. It used to be that once you reached age 70 and a half, you could no longer contribute to any IRA, period. It was done. Well, now the IRS has completely lifted that age restriction. Any American that has earned income and at any age can contribute to an IRA or a Roth IRA up into the annual limit. That limit is $6,000 this year. If you're over age 50, there's an extra $1,000 for a total of $7,000 that you could contribute to an IRA or a Roth in the calendar year. You have to have earned income to do that. Well, this could be very helpful if you plan on or are working past age 70 and a half, and many people are these days. Well, traditional IRA contributions generally provide a tax benefit in that the dollars you contribute generally are deductible from your income. So it has the effect of lowering taxes in that year. So you might be able to, if you're working past that age, still have some tax benefits for your contribution. But of course, with any change in the rules, there comes more quirks. And with this particular rule, contributions after age 72, IRA contributions, would still be subject to required minimum distributions in the subsequent years. Since all IRA dollars are included in an RMD calculation, there is a point of no real benefit that someone can cross in to making traditional IRA contributions in those later years, depending on the size of your current existing IRAs. If that be the case, then it may be worthwhile considering to direct your contributions to a Roth instead of a traditional IRA, so that you won't have to fall into this RMD/contribution trap after age 72. You need to discuss these ideas with your planner and your tax professional to see what might be the best option for you if you do plan on working and making contributions into your 70s. And so another quirk with these new contribution rules, and this harkens back to the QCDs again, qualified charitable distributions are still allowed, as I said, after age 70 and a half, not 72. But if you are still contributing to your IRA after 70 and a half, this could affect, and actually will affect, your future qualified charitable distributions. So let me run through this example real quick. Let's say you're still working and you make IRA contributions at age 71, 72, and 73 for $7,000 each year, a total of $21,000 over 3 years. Then, in your 74th year, you decide that you want to give $40,000 to your favorite charity and you want to direct it from your IRA and do a QCD. Well, since you had tax write-offs of $21,000 over those 3 years, after age 70 and a half, but before you did the QCD, well, the first $21,000 of your QCDs will not be treated as a QCD. It will be considered a taxable withdrawal. So when you gave that $40,000 that year, you would get a 1099 for the $21,000 and pay taxes on that. The remaining 19 would be counted as a QCD, but it would burn through those 3 extra years that you made the IRA contributions. So you need to be aware of that, just to simply know that if you do plan on working past age 70 and a half and contribute to an IRA, and you plan on utilizing the QCD rules later on to help fund your charitable giving, it's critical that you need to consult with your advisor and your tax professional together. You want to make sure that you don't run afoul of any rules or misstep in any tax filings, but talking with your advisor is the best way to make sure you don't misstep there and inadvertently shoot yourself in the tax foot, so to speak. So these new contribution rules will also help in the regard to a non-working or a younger spouse. For instance, if you're working past age 70 and a half and your spouse does not work, but you file a joint tax return, well, your income can also be counted towards an IRA contribution for your spouse. So if that spouse is not yet age 72 and they don't have RMDs until then anyway, this could be a good opportunity to put away a bit more for retirement for a few years. Again, your planner here at Granite Financial Group can walk you through those scenarios and make sure that you benefit from spousal IRA contributions and these new rules that open up the door a bit more to do those contributions. So this is one of the bigger changes in the Secure Act. And if you're listening today, this actually won't affect you as much as it will your ultimate inheritors. And we call it the death of the stretch IRA. So let me do a quick review of some key points before we jump into the details here. Whenever your IRA passes to someone other than your spouse, that person must begin taking distributions from that IRA, regardless of their age, and pay the taxes as they pull it out. They don't get to hold it till 72, anything like that. They must begin the very next year pulling money out of that IRA. The distributions are taxable at whatever tax rate they happen to be in that year or in those years. Now, except for Roth IRAs are not taxable even to your heirs. However, they still must be distributed. And so there's some quirks in there that we'll get to as well. But the death of the stretch IRA is something that's going to have a tremendous effect on your ultimate heirs. For instance, up until December 31st, 2019, any non-spouse inheritor of an IRA had three choices for their distributions. They could take it lump sum, in which it was fully taxable as they pulled it out that year. They could pull it out over 5 years at any rate they wish. It's taxable at the rate at which they pull it out, as long as it's out by 5 years. Or they could take minimum distributions based on their life expectancy, or stretch it, as they say. The stretch option in concept, maybe let's say they inherited in their late 40s or early 50s, and maybe they're required then to pull out 2 to 3% of the account each year based on that life expectancy. But that IRA might still be growing at 6 to 8%. So in effect, the IRA could continue to grow that inheritance for their own retirement down the road. So that's what we call stretching it out for your heirs. Now, some of you may have inherited an IRA that you're listening here today, and maybe last year or in recent years, you've inherited an IRA from a parent or someone else. You are grandfathered into these rules. If you have started stretching that IRA, you may continue to do so. Nothing has changed for you. However, any IRA that passes to a new beneficiary, a non-spouse beneficiary after January 1st this year, unfortunately, any of those IRAs, the stretch is now gone. Future non-spouse beneficiaries of IRAs will now only have two options at their disposal. Again, lump sum, they can take it all out in 1 year, in which it's fully taxable that year, or they can withdraw any amount and at any rate they wish, as long as the account is gone and completely depleted after 10 years of inheriting it. So at best, let's just run this example. At best, your inheritor could take about 1/10 out each year to spread the taxation over 10 years. Now, there are a few exceptions that we have in the rules here for inheritors that are minors or disabled or even chronically ill. You need to talk to your planner if that's the case. And with regard to minors, we're talking about if your IRA passed to your child and that child is still a minor, the minor can actually stretch it while they are minors up until the age of majority. And here in Texas, that age is 18. It's 21 in some states. But at 18, that minor would then be only allowed to pull it out over 10 years maximum from there. So they could not stretch it any longer than the rest of their minor years plus 10 more on top of that. And this minor must be your child, not a grandchild. Grandchildren are specifically excluded from that minor treatment. They only get the two options listed here, lump sum or 10 years from the date they inherit it. So unfortunately, you can't plan around it by leaving some IRA money to grandkids and get the stretch there. So there's a couple of quirks that come in with the stretch of the IRA changes here. For instance, if you've already done some planning in the past with your IRAs and utilized an IRA trust in order to preserve that stretch option for your inheritors, and maybe you had a number of inheritors that you wanted to, in essence, force the stretch on some of those inheritors, well, this is no longer allowed. All IRA trusts are now obsolete with this new rule, and new planning is absolutely necessary today. You do need to contact your advisor and attorney immediately to discuss other alternatives if you had put in place some sort of IRA trust to preserve the stretch option for your inheritors. Another quirk that we've come across here is that well, what if your kids or your ultimate inheritors, whoever they may be, what if they're doing well for themselves when they inherit your IRA? And what if it's a fairly large IRA? What would that do? So let's say you have $1 million IRA. It's not uncommon these days. And it passes to your 50-year-old daughter. And that daughter happens to be a very successful attorney and makes a great living and is already in the 35% tax bracket. Well, at best, that daughter could take $100,000 per year for 10 years if they wanted to employ the 10-year rule. But each year, that additional $100,000 would be additional income and taxed at her income tax rate. That's over 1/3 of your IRA gone to taxes each year because your inheritor is in a good tax bracket because they've done well for themselves. So this might be a concern for you and in your legacy planning. You just need to know how some of these long-term effects could play into your planning here. So the point is, whether you have 1, 3, or any number of beneficiaries, you must remember that your traditional IRAs will still be taxable to them when they get it, and they must pay all of the tax as they take withdrawals. And they must do so within 10 years. So it's worth asking yourself a couple of questions. What kind of tax liability will I leave behind? And can anything be done about that? Well, absolutely. There's always a plan, as we like to say here at Granite. And with these changes in rules, we always stay up late at nights trying to figure out new strategies to make sure you have more options at your disposal. So some possible planning strategies for the lost stretch IRA. Well, first, again, all of these strategies, it's imperative that you consult your advisor and work with them on these new inheritance rules. A complete review of your legacy plan is certainly in order now. You do need to talk about what's going to happen down the road, and it will certainly be time well spent, in our opinion. It's just not an option. You must talk about your legacy plan now. Another possible strategies to consider here is that your charitable giving. Your charitable giving for many of your taxable dollars, such as your IRAs and so forth, maybe directing those IRA dollars more towards the charities and replacing what would have gone to maybe your kids or other inheritors with more tax-favored dollars like Roth IRAs. This death of the stretch IRA makes Roth IRA planning even more valuable to your heirs. They will still have the 10-year rule, but it won't be taxable to them. Roth IRAs still must be distributed, but they are tax-free. So now may be an even better time to reconsider some Roth conversions now and in the coming years while, as Ray mentioned, the current tax rates are low through 2025. Taxes are on sale, as we like to say here, and so it might be a worthwhile time to look at doing some more Roth conversions in your planning here. And Roth conversions involve some very complex planning, so that's exactly the type of planning we love to do here. So you definitely need to consult with your advisor about the best possibilities there. It also might be time to re-examine your life insurance situation. Life insurance is an income tax-free benefit to your beneficiary, and there are no withdrawal requirements on those death benefits. So life insurance becomes very valuable to your heirs in your planning strategies as well. So some households with large IRAs and where RMDs might force more income than is actually needed, maybe some of those extra RMD dollars could be funneled to let's say a second to die life insurance policy where the last spouse to pass, the inheritors would get the life insurance benefits tax-free and with no withdrawal requirements, but your IRA dollars, you could then funnel those in your will to a charity. Charities receive taxable IRA dollars tax-free. So it's a very good benefit for them. So you're helping your family as well as helping your favorite charities. Again, just one strategy that might be considered in your legacy planning here to avoid unnecessary taxation to your inheritors for larger IRA inheritances. There are ways that we could also simulate a stretch IRA in some sense. This would be for someone who has obviously a decent size IRA, but also some charitable intent in their planning. A charitable remainder trust could be a valuable tool to distribute IRA dollars to your heirs over a longer span. We can craft a charitable remainder trust to distribute your IRA to heirs over, say, a 20-year time frame versus a 10-year. It would stretch that taxation over a longer time frame, so maybe that helps them out from a tax perspective. But then at the end of that time period, any remaining dollars would then need to go to the charity after those years, and there must be something left for the charity in this setup. But again, if you have ongoing charitable intent as well as many heirs and you wish to extend the amount of time that they can withdraw money from 10 to beyond, a charitable remainder trust might be a tool to help you with that type of planning. But you definitely need to talk with your advisor in conjunction with a tax professional and a estate planning attorney as well to make sure that you benefit the best that you can from that sort of strategy. So all of these are just different strategies that we try to help you deploy to deal with the new things that have come about due to this Secure Act. There are also some issues here that I'm going to ask Mark to step in, our tax professional, that might help you with some of your deductions on your actual tax returns and filing. So Mark, why don't you give us some information here about the Secure Act and deductions?
Thanks, Casey. One of the things that the Secure Act did, instead of the meat and potatoes of the changes in the retirement accounts, is that they renewed some tax extenders that expired, some in 2017 and some in 2018. Some of the most significant ones that I think are most common were the medical expense deduction. It was supposed to have gone up to 10% of AGI on January 1st of 2019. It's going to be kept at 7.5% through 2020 now. Qualified tuition and fees deduction was not a deductible expense at the end of 2017, but now it's been retroactively reinstated through 2020. So kind of what that means is that even though you filed your 2018 return and couldn't take those deductions at that time, you can go back and file an amended return if it affects you to recapture those that deduction that was previously disallowed. So usually they pass these extenders 3-4 months into the current tax year for the previous tax year, and it's not an effect as bad as effective as going back and changing a year and a half, 2 years ago. So a couple more though. Mortgage insurance premiums, the PMI deduction is now been reinstated. the exclusion for forgiven debt on a primary residence, as long as that debt's forgiven before January 1st, 2021, up to $2 million is excluded from income. And here's another one I think that might affect more people than not, is that the personal tax credit is up to $500 lifetime now, but it's for residential energy improvements, which a lot of people do. They'll replace windows in their house, or they'll put in a high efficiency air conditioning and heating system, or furnace, or heat pump, or hot water heater. So now that's a tax credit. So that's a dollar for dollar tax reduction on your return, not just a tax a $500 deduction from your income. It's actually a dollar for dollar credit against your tax liability. So meat and potatoes, like I said, retirement account, this kind of complicates things a little bit, maybe not. So I'm just wanted to encourage you, if any of these things you think may have affected your 2018 return because you weren't able to take advantage of these extenders that expired, I would strongly advise you to get with your tax advisor and discuss it and see if an amended return is justified at this point to help you get some of that those tax dollars back. So that's all I really kind of wanted to cover on the extenders, Casey. It's back to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. Well, those are the main issues that we wanted to chat about today on this webinar, and we appreciate you tuning in for this. A couple of final thoughts that we just wanted to share with you here. Rules and regulations change constantly. The IRS, the government, they have updates every year, and every few years there's a major change such as this Secure Act. And usually with any of these rule change, it affects more than one part of your planning. And as we've seen with these Secure Act rules, it affects not only your RMDs and your IRAs while you're living, but it affects your inheritance plans, it affects your charitable giving. Well, that's why it's critical that you work with a team of advisors that can look at your life from several points of view, from a tax standpoint, an investment, a legal, an insurance, a financial planning standpoint, and much, much more to help you get the most out of your plans as possible and preserve as many options for you and your family to come in the years ahead. Granite Financial Group's planners are well qualified to make such type of plans and recommendations, and our strategic relationships with tax professionals such as Mark and various attorneys, we're all here to help make sure that your lives are set up properly for what may come. And it's with this breadth of detail that we generally can walk with you and your family through life and make sure that the road is as smooth as possible. We want to get you to your goals and your desires. That's what brings us the most joy, and we're very, very grateful that we help the families that we do and are glad that you tuned in today, and we hope to hear from you with any specific questions you might have. Ray, any final thoughts?
Well, Casey, thank you for an excellent presentation. A lot of material here, and basically this is not a webinar that answers all questions in detail. It's impossible to do that, but we wanted to give you thoughts to allow it to germinate in your thinking as to what could you do, and not just go through these years, these next 6 years, hopefully 6 years, that will have the rates, the tax rates at this low and in these brackets. So the RMDs are not required until you reach the age of 72. But if you took an RMD in 18 and 19 when you are 70, 70 and a half, and 71, then you're still locked into that same rate system. But if you did not take RMDs in 18 and 19 when you were 70 and a half or 71, and you're, say, 70 right now, then you wait until you're 72 to take your first one. And then the fact that tax rates are low, and most people, a lot of people, I mean, we have clients that make quite a bit of money in their retirement pensions and the 401ks and all the things that they receive. And yet, because of deductions that our tax strategists can work on by the things that are other issues that they're involved in life, such as rent homes and different issues. We're able to help them get their actual rates down in the 16, 17, 18, 20. And so you're just not locked into 20 and 24. That's your marginal rate, but working on tax deductions is a challenge, but that's what our professionals will do. And so if you're in that 22, 24% tax bracket now, that's not much different than what we've always known capital gains rate, capital gains tax rate, around 20, sometimes 15 to 20%. So right now we've got ordinary income tax rates that are in that 22, 24, close to cap gains rates of the past. And if a spouse passes, and then we've got a surviving spouse that goes into a tax bracket that could be up to 40 and 45%, and yet at lower income thresholds, we call that the widow or the widower tax trap, which means that there's just one now that's filing. So would it be prudent to convert incremental amounts of the IRA in the years from 20 to 25 up to the ceiling of your tax rate? So if you can make up to 180,000 and stay in the 22% tax bracket, and you're getting 120, there's 60,000 of extra dollars before you hit the next tax bracket. That's what we're referring to. And you wouldn't have to do the whole 60,000 from 120 to 180, but maybe 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 per year, and then pay those, and what I would call rescue those IRA dollars out of the higher tax rate possibility for the widow and bring it over to a Roth, so that that widow or widower in later years is now drawing from an account that is not taxable at all. So less taxes for a spouse. And so all of the planners that are here at Granite Financial are very qualified to help you, your family, your children, your neighbors, your friends that may be listening with you today. And they need to know that there is a firm filled with professionals that is able to assist in a holistic, general, comprehensive way. So this last week, I have been, and other counselors here have been involved with families that had to do with family issues, child custody, from the legal standpoint, creating a better revocable living trust, or wills and powers, and sitting in with the attorneys, strategies for the new year with our tax strategist, and then some of the finest investment strategies that are not up and down the street, normally just normal brokerage accounts. And so very sophisticated, volatility managed, tax managed issues then from the investment side that are helping families. And we're so delighted, as Casey said, my partner now for 18 years, as he said, about all that we enjoy doing. It's a joy to serve. When I sit with a family or a new family and I hear their issues and they begin to share things that they would never share with anyone else because they have not been to a financial advisor that helped in all of the family issues and complications of their mother and dad, of their children, of their grandchildren. And so multi-generational issues are brought to the table, and great counsel has been given and interacted with them. And it's a joy to be able to serve clients in this very, very comprehensive way. So I presume that we're open for some questions, and I see several. I'm going to let Casey take the first one. I'm not even looking at them.
We have a question here from Jennifer, and she asks, are tax rates guaranteed to be low through 2026, or are they just projected? Well, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which projected our current tax rates to be effective beginning in 2018, they are scheduled to stay the same through the end of 2025, at which time they will revert to the tax rates that were in place before the act, which were the Obama administration era tax rates. So they are a little higher. At this point, that's what's in the law. They are projected to revert after the end of 2025 to the past rates. We're going to have 2 elections between now and then, so I guess Congress could do anything to change it, but that's what we have to work with, and that's what we're going to go with. The current rates are in effect through 2025. All right. I don't see any other questions. I do see one about, will slides be made available? If you would like a copy of the slides, I believe we can email those out to the. If so, you may send an email to info@gfg.solutions. We're also going to archive this webinar to be available on our website, and you'll get an email about that as well, so you can have a link to access it if you wish to review any of the information. Well, I don't see any other questions, so I think we might go ahead and close up shop for today. We thank all of you for being a part of this webinar. We intend to have regular webinars throughout this year with more interesting observations about new rules and tax laws, as well as strategies that you can deploy to make your life better and have more options. Thank you for attending. We appreciate your time, and we will see you very soon.